Florida is considering a classical and Christian alternative to the SATs. That seems weird.
So apparently, it's a different assessment from. It's not a. Wait, scroll up to the headline again.
Sorry.
Alternative to the SAT, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a different standardized test
Mm-hmm. There are different
called
standardized
the
tests.
Classical
Yeah.
Learning Test.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, your SAT and ACT are your main ones that colleges accept.
Right.
I'm not really sure what. I'm not sure what the. I guess we could call it the CLT,
Classical. Yeah. There's an entire
Classical Learning
company,
Test.
Classical Learning CLT. Yeah. Founded in 2015, is used primarily by private schools and homeschooling families, and is rooted in the classical education model, which focuses on the centrality of the Western tradition. Well, if you're Western, you're not central, but whatever. Uh, that means America is great and has never done anything wrong. The test. Um, uh, incre- uh, so the founder of this CLT company, Jeremy Tate, terrible choice of a last name right now, um, said the test is meant to be an alternative to the College Board admissions SAT exam, which he says has become increasingly ideological, in part because it has censored the entire Christian Catholic intellectual tradition and other thinkers in the history of Western thought. I don't.
Pretty stupid.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Conservapedia. Have you ever seen this thing?
I have, yeah.
It is entirely uh, alt history. Like
Well, I don't
Conservapedia
think that
is.
this. I'm really not sure what this test is supposed to be testing. I mean, what are the? What, I don't know. I don't have any of the specifics on this test.
Um,
Um, I know that the SAT and ACT essentially function as IQ tests. That's about it.
right, and that's the idea is that and those are private companies that are, the SATs and ACTs are like private entities that they can create their own stuff and create their own tests and stuff like that, and they work with the colleges to make sure that the people getting into college have the right scores and they know what they're getting. This makes sense, I think. Uh, this guy in 2015 thought that the SATs and the ACTs were woke and too liberal, and so he created an alternative. Uh,
Which
Wikipedia.
I'm not sure about. I mean, the SAT, I think I disagree with the guy that made this then, because I took the SAT,
Mhm,
you know, 12 years ago,
mhm.
and I don't recall it being particularly woke. I know that, I'm sure you could have like reading assignments in the SAT, which, there's questions about that and like reading comprehension and whatnot, that maybe you put in a particular passage from a particular book that some people might not like, but it's a matter of understanding what was said. It's not a matter of ingesting, the politics of the paragraph. So
Mhm.
I don't recall it being particularly woke. Um,
It is strange. See, and this is why I don't much appreciate Mr. DeSantis. I think that he complains about things, and then this is what gets filled in. This is what gets filled in the gaps. When he starts making changes to education and stuff like that, people like this guy are going to come in and suggest that uh, people seeking a testing option focused on the great classical and Christian tradition should go with the classical learning test option. And I think, I mean, that is a very political sentence, right?
yeah, I mean, I'll agree with that. I'm wondering at the same, like, I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck this test is. Like, um, if you scroll down to how the tests compare, Verbal reasoning, grammar, and writing, okay, which all are part of the SAT, and quantitative reasoning, which is that math.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. um, so
I can.
reasoning, grammar, and writing and math, which is the SAT. Like the SAT is there is a reading and writing component and a math component that make up like the entire score. And then, well, hold on, it's a reading component and a math component, and then I think they actually added 800 points for a writing component before that got taken away
Hmm.
because it wasn't popular and was subjective to the test graders. So they took that away. So it went away from being the writing component increased the maximum possible SAT score to 2400 for a period of time, but then because it was determined to be subjective by the person grading it, they took that away and made it all multiple choice again.
Um,
So there's no writing component of the SAT anymore.
okay, so they've taken that out. This is their website for the CLT. Um, English grammar and mathematical skills, providing a comprehensive measure of achievement and aptitude. Unlike other tests that change according to educational or cultural trends, the CLT exams emphasize foundational critical thinking skills and are accessible to students from a variety of educational backgrounds. The classic learning test refers to our use of classic literature and historical texts for the reading selections on our exams. By engaging students with this meaningful content, CLT assessment offer a more edifying testing experience that reflect a holistic education. Mm,
Okay, so it's the SAT, but they use Thomas Paine for their
it's yeah,
reading portion
it's
instead of.
SAT, but they don't use anything new that we've learned because why would you like change what you learned when new information pops up? That's a terrible idea.
This is literally like they don't want a new. They don't want the reading. Like I said, they don't want the reading portion, the reading comprehension portion of the SAT to have anything
Past
that's
the year 1900. Nothing 19 we're
sure,
1899 and before. That is it. That is our
yeah.
entire learning structure and that is silly to me. I don't mind the idea of reading classical literature or historical texts, but if something newer and more correct came along, you should use the newer, more correct stuff.
For the purpose of assessing people, I don't know if there is a newer and more correct. I mean, if you can read and comprehend, then you can read and comprehend.
Okay.
Like that's it. So actually, if that's the only thing that's different from the SAT, then I don't care.
Okay. And if it's pushing the great classical and Christian traditions, do you care?
I don't remember what my readings were for the SAT when I took the SAT. So no, I don't.
Okay. If it's
Like, it,
creating that
this
two-tiered
is
system that I've
nothing.
been talking about,
What do you mean?
what if the two-tiered system where the people some people in Florida learn a certain thing and then some people in Ohio learn a different thing and it's got two different tests and the colleges by choice of the governor aren't allowed to teach certain things.
Well, these are the same. This is not that. This is we're using a different standardized test,
Hmm.
and the difference between the standardized tests is in the materials used for reading comprehension,
Okay.
and that's it. So, if you can comprehend what it is that you're reading, then there is no difference.
It, the subjects that you study would be the difference.
No, no, no. This is a difference in the reading comprehension portion of the test, which I didn't study any of the shit that was the reading comprehension for the SAT. Actually, I didn't study for the SAT at all. Um, but I don't remember what it is that I actually had to read for it, but I imagine, you know, you're reading something novel to you, right? Like that's the theory is that when you read, you're supposed to read something novel to you and then be able to answer questions on what it was about afterward.
Hopefully, but I mean, I suppose if it, I don't see it. I get what you're going for. If the SAT gives you a page, you read it, you tell us something about it, great. If the CLT here gives you a page, you read it, you tell us what it's about. There's no difference between the two.
Exactly. That's
I
exactly what I'm
I
saying. Yes.
I get what you're going for. Um, and I wouldn't mind if somebody said, "Hey, this SAT uh, reading comprehension thing is uh, a political stance, and we don't want that in our SATs, and we don't trust the SATs because of that." That sounds fine to me. I agree. I don't want that reading comprehension thing to be a description of uh, the BLM movement. I get why you wouldn't want that in your test, but I think that as so often happens, there are conservative people who don't like the current world we're in, and they're trying to segregate themselves into a special world where things are different, similar to Conservapedia. Uh, I'm sure I can
Well,
find all kinds of weird crap on Conservapedia that just isn't real. And this is where, if you got all your information from here, and you take this test, and you follow uh, Republican uh, politicians, the world is different for you.
so obviously, I'm inclined to believe that this is something to do with the first of your options
Hmm.
and not the second. So the idea that we don't want woke passages to be the uh, the passage used for reading comprehension, for example.
Hmm.
Um, at the same time, I don't actually give a fuck.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
you can read and comprehend what something is saying without digesting and incorporating the information into your daily life.
Okay.
Uh, so it's kind of a moot point to me because you're literally reading and then spitting information back about what you just read
Hmm.
for purposes of passing a test. It's nothing like it's not actual education. You're reading and regurgitating.
Hmm. And
Um,
okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, is that not a measure of the education you've received so far? Is that not the point of the
It
SATs, to
it
measure how
is
much you've been educated?
well it is, but it's not a measure of how much you've been educated uh, on left wing uh, politics. It's
Hmm.
a measure of how much you've been educated on reading. So I can read the Communist Manifesto
Hmm. And then tell us
and
about it.
uh,
Yeah.
and tell you about it without having ever been educated on the Communist Manifesto itself.
Okay.
And that doesn't matter. Like I'm not going to take that as the word of God and incorporate the Communist Manifesto into my everyday life. You know,
Okay. Okay. I hear what you're saying, and maybe you're right. I just hope it doesn't create that two-tiered system where, like, the the person who goes to a Florida school and takes the CLT is so drastically differently educated than other people in the country that they now have to butt heads because he was taught on books from the 1800s where Columbus is a super cool guy who never did anything wrong. And then when
I
he
mean,
goes out into the world and people are like, yeah, we are taking down a Columbus statue, he's upset.
well, I mean that's not this. This is
I think that's
this
exactly
is
what this is
the
going to lead to.
CLT and SAT. If the difference between them is the passages used for reading comprehension, then you're talking about the difference between a modern book and somebody having to read Common Sense by Thomas Paine
Hmm.
and tell us what a page from that is about. Like, I mean, you still have to
And if
just
you
read a passage,
right, and if you
right?
know,
Like,
well, if you know that none of the books past the year 1900 are going to be in your CLT, and the CLT is important for you to getting into college in Florida, would you ever read a book printed after 1900?
yeah, if you like reading.
But it wouldn't help you pass this test, and it wouldn't help you get into a Florida college.
I don't think that I mean the chances of you reading a book that was already the chances of you reading a book that gets incorporated into the SAT in the end is so infinitesimally small anyway. Like you're
Maybe.
not reading a Harry Potter passage at the SAT. It's just
Oh
not
no.
happening.
But if you've mentioned Thomas Paine twice now, if you knew
Twice?
at least three times Thomas Paine, you have, um, if your son was going to take the CLT and you have heard that it has Thomas Paine information on it, would you make him read it to study ahead of time? Would it be a smart thing to do? If
Maybe.
okay,
Or maybe he just needs to know how to read. Like
okay,
I don't I mean you can read something and still get the wrong interpretation. The fact that your eyes scan the words on a page does not mean that you actually comprehend what is being said. That's the thing is that reading comprehension is a skill
mm-hmm,
that is being tested on the SAT.
mm-hmm,
So actually knowing what was said is is what is being attempted to be tested at least, as opposed to just memorizing pages. And if you get the wrong page, I mean, now your training is useless. If you're trying to do rote memorization of, uh, I think it's impossible. The number of possibilities for pages and questions of different classical literature is impossible. Just like it's impossible to figure out what it is that they're going to use as passages on the SAT.
mm,
So I honestly I think the CLT is silly.
okay. I think
Um,
you're right that they wouldn't know what it is, but if it has a, if you if you knew that your life, your future depends on passing the CLT, and regularly they use Thomas Paine uh, essays, you would studying would mean you read Thomas Paine essays. And if you study Thomas Paine, does that change your politics?
well, I don't think so.
You don't
I
think so?
mean,
Okay.
well, actually, maybe it does. But I mean, we're talking about one of the foundations, or the foundations, of the um, thinking behind the American Revolution.
He's an important American thinker. I agree. Thomas Paine is. And
So
if you read his
why would you
stuff,
not want to read his stuff?
I'm not saying you would or wouldn't. I'm saying, um, could this test dictate what people study, and in studying, dictate how they think?
If it influences people to read classical literature, um, then I'm sure that reading classical literature could influence the way you think. Yeah,
Hmm. Okay. And so,
but I don't think that people read. I mean, maybe. Well, I guess maybe if the since the diction is a little different, like the language used is a little bit different in classical literature than it is now, because our language has changed. Then sure, they might actually go back and do some studying by reading that stuff in order to improve their reading comprehension scores.
hmm,
Uh, but I, I don't see a problem with it.
okay. You just think that CLT is a bad idea because it contains old stuff, or I I'm worried. Yeah.
I think that CLT is literally just it's just silliness. I mean, it's the SAT except that you use classical literature instead of uh instead of modern literature for your reading comprehension.
Okay.
Am I understanding that wrong? Like, is
No,
there a diff?
you're just not taking it to the extreme that I am. I might be overreacting to the sentence "great classical and Christian tradition." Um, I'm taking it to an extreme. I'm suggesting that this guy wants people to think a certain way, and in trying to get them to think a certain way, he has created a test, and that test requires you to study things that make you think the way he wants you to think. That's all. That's what I'm worried
I
about.
mean,
Worst case scenario, that's what he's trying to do.
you could read Shakespeare,
Hmm.
and you would have a if you can comprehend Shakespeare, I'm sure that whatever they throw at you in CLT is going to be just fine, uh, without studying anything from the 1700s
I hope you're
in
right.
America. In America, like you don't have to read Common Sense by Thomas Paine. If you understand Shakespeare, then I'm sure you can read a passage from it in the CLT and pass just fine without ever having set eyes on the book
Okay.
or the. I think it was a pamphlet actually.
Oh, it might have been.
I think it was
Okay.
like 12 pages or something like
Okay.
that.
And yeah, this is just connected to the education arguments we've been having the past couple of days because I think things are happening in Florida, uh, and it just keeps popping up. Um, okay. Anything else you want to say about this one?
Nope.
Okay. I think we said it all. Oh, hi. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you liked what you saw, hit the like button, press the subscribe button. Uh, if you want to tell me how right I am, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to tell me how wrong I am, leave a comment too. That's good. Um, this is just kind of a hobby for me, so I appreciate you coming by, giving it a watch, and pressing the YouTube buttons. Thanks.